Hi Brian, I was wondering why many fountain pen aficionados prefer resin over metal. I know one argument is that metal sections are a bit slippery or cold to the touch when compared to resin. Yep. But I think the durability and weight of metal pens are desirable traits to many that make up for these. Despite this, they seem much more popular with the corporate crowd than with hardcore fountain pen users. Of course, as is the case with most things, it has a lot to do with personal preference, but is there an alternative explanation you can offer? Yeah, this is a good point, because this is one of the things that when I first got into the fountain pen world, I didn't understand at all. In fact, when I was making pens, I was making rollerball pens for the corporate gift crowd. So I was making, I think I've shown it before, but let me see, I know I have one handy. But like, here's a couple examples of some of the pens that I was making personally back in my wood pen making days. So here's one. It's a wood body, and it's got you know, metal parts. It's got a metal grip. It's a pretty heavy pen. And this is the smaller version. And then here's this one. I mean, this thing is gargantuan. I've got big hands, so it's hard to tell, but it's massive. Really cool looking, but you know, very kind of gaudy, very, very heavy. This one doesn't even post, but very back weighted as well. The weight's all crazy. I didn't understand why fountain pen people liked resin pens and liked lighter pens and things like that over these bigger, heavier pens when I first got into the fountain pen thing. I quickly found out why, because when I was making these pens, I started carrying paper and ink to try to get people to notice my pens, and then I thought I would be this master pen craftsman making these pens for the fountain pen community. Did not work out that way because of this very issue. The weight, the metalness of the pens is not as appealing to the hardcore fountain pen writers as they are to, you know, people that you write, like, are kind of in like the corporate, you know, using a pen at work kind of crowd, particularly those who are more familiar with rollerballs. Generally, the corporate crowd likes these heavier pens because they're not writing with them for long periods of time at once. They're picking it up. There is certainly an appeal to a heavy pen as far as quality. I think generally speaking, to those who first get into pens, they think the heavier the pen, the better the quality, because you're coming over from, you know, a pen like a G2, you know, it's a nice pen, but it's a couple dollars pen, and it's really light and plastic, and, you know, the build quality is okay, but it's not anything fancy. Or you get like the Bic sticks or the ballpoint pens, and, you know, there's just nothing impressive about those. So when you get into the more expensive pens, they get a little flashier. You're getting into metal away from this kind of injection molded plastic, so metal seems better quality. It's shinier, so it's more impressive just in that way. And the weight translates to quality for a lot of people who they first get into it. The thing that you'll find, though, is when you really start to use fountain pens ongoing, like regularly, is the weight itself can be a little bit of a hindrance. You know, it's heavier in the hand. It can cause you to get fatigued as you're writing for long periods. Also, when you're carrying the same pen around with you everywhere, you know, if you're used to using these little disposable things, you're not going to like grab onto this pen and carry it with you like it's life and death. You know, you're going to be like right with it, and you'll have them some just laying around, and you'll just kind of searching, like it doesn't matter. You just pick up a pen and you don't really worry about it. When you get a nicer pen and you start carrying it around with you everywhere, if you're carrying this big heavy pen in your pocket, it's going to weigh down. It's going to be more likely to kind of fall out of your pocket if you're leaning over because of the weight and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily as desirable to have this big heavy pen when it's your kind of daily carry around pen, especially if you get into carrying like 3, 4, 5, 6 pens with you everywhere you go. It can add up to the weight. But then when you get into the metal grip as well, you're right. I think you already pretty much pointed it out. It can get a little bit slippery. It can also cause your hand to cramp with this metal grip, because as you're writing, especially for longer periods, it can kind of get the oil in your fingers can get it to slip a little bit, and so you have to kind of grip the pen heavier to keep it in the right place. And especially because when you're writing with a rollerball pen, you can write with it and it doesn't matter the pen rotation in your hand. It's going to write the same. But with a fountain pen, you have to have it in the proper orientation. So you have to have kind of a firmer grip on these pens when you're dealing with a rotation thing if you have a slippery grip. If you have a grip that's not as slippery, it's not as much of an issue. But when you have in your hands kind of slipping, you got to grip it tighter and it can cause your hand to cramp up. That's why people don't like those metal grips as much for if you're writing with a long period of time. I think I covered about everything that I had in my notes here, but yeah, that's about it. So I would say if you're writing for like 5 to 10 minutes or more at a time, that's when it starts to become a little bit cumbersome.